Once hailed as the Hollywood of the East, Hong Kong's film industry became world famous for its epic martial arts sagas, gritty crime thrillers, and even blockbuster comedies. The 1980s and 90s were arguably the golden era of Hong Kong cinema, with stars including Bruce Lee and Jackie Chan coming to the forefront, and visionary directors such as Wong Kar-wai showcasing their talents. The past 2 decades, however, have seen a decline in the industry's fortunes. Once the titan of Asian cinema, Hong Kong's movie industry has seen its sheen fade. What contributed to the rise of Hong Kong cinema? What was the reason for its allure? And most importantly, what factors have driven the decline of what was once Asia's premier movie-making hub? It was in 1896 that the fuse was lit when a French film crew from the Lumière studio visited Hong Kong. They introduced something entirely new to the city: cinema. This novel concept quickly took root, and by the early 20th century, Hong Kong's Mandarin film industry was on a clear upward trajectory. In 1914, director Lai Man-wai, known as the father of Hong Kong cinema, produced Hong Kong's first feature film, Zhuangzi Tests His Wife. Cantonese language talkies began gaining popularity in the 1930s. The first of these talkies was White Gold Dragon, produced by a Shanghai studio named Tianyi, the predecessor of the Shaw Studios' film empire. Unfortunately, during the Japanese occupation in 1941, all film archives in Hong Kong were destroyed, so there is currently very little in the way of pre-World War II cinema footage. Post-World War II, filmmakers, bolstered by a fresh influx of talent from mainland China, resumed production, and this period saw an increase in films made in both Mandarin and Cantonese, though films in Mandarin were generally held in higher esteem. With a spring in everyone's step, this gave rise to the emergence of major studios like Shaw Brothers and Motion Picture and General Investment, which would later be known as Cathay. These studios came to dominate the scene in the region, setting the stage for a revolutionary age of Hong Kong film. 1963 saw the British governors of Hong Kong mandate that all films produced must include English subtitles, and this policy change made Hong Kong's films more accessible to international audiences, broadening their appeal. This allowed the industry to go from strength to strength, growing into a formidable filmmaking market. By the 1970s, Hong Kong cinema entered a period of unprecedented growth and international recognition, paving the way for a golden age of cinema that would soon follow. It was during this period that iconic director King Hu rose to prominence, becoming one of the most pivotal figures in Hong Kong cinema, and almost single-handedly being responsible for the revival of the martial arts and wuxia genres. His films, such as Come Drink With Me from 1966 and A Touch of Zen, released in 1971, are celebrated for their artistic quality and innovative fight choreography. Hu's work elevated the wuxia genre from its pulp origins to something more akin to high art, blending storytelling with beautifully choreographed action sequences. These films offered a glimpse into Chinese culture and history, providing an escape from the harsh realities of day-to-day life for Hong Kong's citizens. With subtitling featured in every film, they began to achieve international acclaim. It wasn't just traditional Chinese cinema. The martial arts genre began to change with more modern themes, largely thanks to the emergence of Bruce Lee as a global superstar. Bruce Lee's groundbreaking films included 1971's The Big Boss, The Fist of Fury, and The Way of the Dragon in 1972. This was followed by the iconic Enter the Dragon in 1973, which quickly became Hong Kong's biggest export, taking over $20 million at the box office. Jackie Chan also introduced a novel approach to martial arts cinema, merging action with a distinctive brand of comedy. Due to the draw of these huge internationally loved stars, Hong Kong was now making films for audiences from the East and the West. The true golden age of Hong Kong cinema dawned in the 1980s, and it lasted until the mid-1990s. Heroic bloodshed, a term often associated with director John Woo, who, with films like A Better Tomorrow from 1986 featuring Chow Yun-fat, The Killer in 1989, and Hardboiled, which was released in 1992, created a template for action cinema that focused on gangsters, loyalty, and stylized gunfights. These films, known for their balletic violence and moral themes, weren't just popular in Hong Kong and China, but also gained a cult following internationally. Wu's style was influencing filmmakers around the world, and Hong Kong became one of the world's biggest exporters of cinematic productions and the most prolific film industry outside of Hollywood itself. Hong Kong's cinema industry during this golden age wasn't just being recognized for its commercial successes, its role in pioneering new filmmaking techniques cannot be ignored, particularly when it comes to action choreography. The dynamic, innovative action sequences seen in Hong Kong films of this era, which included huge stunts and more fluid use of camera work, had an influence on Hollywood that shaped how action films were made and are still made today. Directors and choreographers from Hong Kong were increasingly sought after in the West, bringing their expertise to American films and thereby shaping the action genre at an international level. At its peak in the 1980s and into the 1990s, Hong Kong's film studios were producing around 400 films per year, which was more than Japan with its much larger population and economy. However, the industry faced a slowdown in the mid-1990s as it began to struggle with the impending handover of Hong Kong from Britain to China in 1997, among other challenges. With the transition of Hong Kong from a British colony back to Chinese sovereignty in 1997 being a political and cultural turning point, this handover caused uncertainty and required significant changes to be made. Filmmakers and the industry as a whole had to adapt to an entirely new political and creative landscape in Hong Kong, and its successful film industry sadly suffered as a result. Whilst Hong Kong had the most active film industry on the planet during the early 1990s, the production quality of a large proportion of these films was actually substandard. Many investors were looking to make a quick buck in this buoyant market, including triad gangs, a dark side to the boom years. The result? Overproduction of poor quality films. This, coupled with filmmakers jumping from one trend to another in search of the next big thing, resulted in audience fatigue. Suddenly, Hong Kong's fabled ability to churn out movies in rapid-fire succession went from virtue to vice. In addition to this, Hong Kong cinema had long been bolstered by international stars like Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan, and Leslie Cheung, who appealed to audiences across the world. Unfortunately, Hong Kong never resolved the question of who was to come after. As the film industry slid into decline, filmmakers continued to rely on established stars who were considered reliable earners. The boom of the Hong Kong film industry in 1992 can be partially explained by its success in the Taiwan and East Asia markets. It is worth noting that the box office performance outside of Hong Kong experienced a sharp drop from 1.16 billion Hong Kong dollars in films to only 430 million from the year 1995 to 1996. The loss of the Taiwan and East Asia markets is an important reason for the decline of the industry. Although the late 1980s saw Taiwan's Xinbao begin to invest in Hong Kong film productions, the decision by Taiwan to eventually localize film production brought that arrangement to a halt. The Asian financial crisis of 1997 only added to these struggles, with economies across the region, including Hong Kong, being directly affected. Whilst Hong Kong's financial sector was able to weather the storm, the crisis had a huge impact on the wider economy, including the film industry. The result was decreased production budgets and an evident decline in the quality and quantity of film productions. It was quite clear that these financial constraints had a direct impact on the production capabilities and creative freedom of what was once the world's most thriving film industry. Even though Hong Kong has shown signs of a bounce back much quicker than some of its neighbours, the global film market started to change at the turn of the 21st century. Hollywood blockbusters started to dominate the global box office as Western culture began to appeal to a wider range of societies around the world. This, coupled with the increase in larger multiplex cinemas, presented a real challenge for the Hong Kong film industry. Local productions, once wildly popular domestically, found it harder to compete with the high production values, mammoth marketing budgets, and international appeal of Hollywood films. You might even say Hollywood learned everything it needed to know from Hong Kong and used its knowledge from collaborative efforts in the 80s and 90s to create films appealing to Asian cultures. Piracy and the rise of other competing media also contributed to the downturn. This has only snowballed in the years since, with the rise of streaming platforms, both legitimate and illegal. TV shows as a medium around the world began to compete with cinema. What was once the Hollywood of the East fell into decline. Ticket sales plummeted and audience sizes for local productions reduced. In recent years, the industry has undergone mass-scale adaptation and evolution. The biggest change has been the increase in co-productions with mainland China. This shift has opened up new avenues for funding and distribution, but it has also fundamentally changed and watered down the artistic content within Hong Kong films. To appeal to the broader and more diverse audiences of mainland China, many of these co-productions have adjusted their storytelling techniques, themes, and content. Continued success has come, to a certain extent, at the expense of cultural integrity. This does mean there are signs of a return to growth, particularly following the COVID-19 crisis. After the challenges of the pandemic, Hong Kong cinema is showing signs of a comeback, with several local films performing well at the box office in 2022. Films like Warriors of Future and Table for Six have found success by catering to local audiences who are seeking more narrative-driven stories compared to the exaggerated and effects-laden Hollywood blockbusters they had grown fatigued with. There is also a brand new generation of Hong Kong filmmakers, some working in the city and others who have moved overseas. These young minds are bringing fresh perspectives and creativity to the already established industry. Local companies and government initiatives are helping support this new talent, moving beyond traditional cop thrillers and action comedies of the past. Instead, they are creating unique and unprecedented projects that appeal locally and around the world. Looking ahead, the future of Hong Kong cinema will hinge on its ability to continue with innovation, while preserving its unique cultural and cinematic identity. Embracing new technologies, platforms, and distribution methods could play a pivotal role in this process. The rise of digital streaming services, advancements in film production technology, and the global reach of the internet aren't just problems, they're also opportunities for Hong Kong cinema. By leveraging these tools and platforms, the industry can navigate the challenges of the modern entertainment landscape and continue to thrive in an increasingly competitive and globalized film market. It is unlikely that we see a return to the golden era of the 1980s and 90s, but with a refocusing of resources and adaptation to the new information-rich internet era we live in, we may just see a return to a more significant contribution to the global cinema from an industry that still makes up around 5% of Hong Kong's economy.